A warm good evening to everyone. On behalf of Bhagwan Shitalnath Chair for Jain Archaeology, I welcome you all for today's lecture number 17 of Professor H.D. Sankalia monthly lecture series on Jain heritage. Before we start our lecture, I would like to request Dr. Shrikant Ganvi sir, coordinator of Bhagwan Shitalnath Chair for Jain Archaeology, to give introduction about the chair.
Thank you, Dhananjay. Good evening to all of you, and welcome to the 17th session of Professor S.D. Sanklia monthly online lecture. This lecture series is organized by Bhagavan Shitalnath Chair for Jain Archaeology, Department of Ancient Indian History, Culture and Archaeology, Deccan College Postgraduate and Research Institute deemed to be university. Bhagavan Chetarnath Chair for Jain Archaeology is funded by International School for Jain Studies, a division of Amar Prerna Trust Pune and Vardhaman Charitable Foundation, USA. This lecture series is named after the founder of Department of Ancient Indian History, Culture and Archaeology at Deccan College, Professor S.D. Sanklia, who is also an eminent archaeologist and father of Indian archaeology, who has started studies of archaeology in a scientific perspective. To pay our respect and homage to immense contribution of Professor S.D. Sanklia to Indian archaeology in general and to Jain art, architecture, and archaeology of Jainism in particular. Uh, the Bhagwan Shitalnath Chair for Jain Archaeology has started his lecture series. And as Professor S.D. Sanklia always promoted young researchers and scholars to take up their research in the field in the field of archaeology and its different aspects or dimensions of archaeology. So we invite young scholars and researchers who are working in the different fields of archaeology. Today we have with us Srihari uh, uh, Tote, a young art historian and an artist. Thank you, all of you.
Good evening, everyone. Sir, can I
Just a
continue
minute.
right now?
Thank you so much, sir.
Yeah, yeah.
Just thank you so much, sir. Our today's topic is mapping devotion, shrines, rock cut sanctuaries, and Jain hagiography at Dharashiva. Before starting our lecture, I would like to request Guruvendra Kushwa to please give a formal introduction to our today's speaker.
Thank you, Dhananjay Bhaiya, for giving me this opportunity to introduce Srihari Tote. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the 17th lecture of the Professor H.D. Sankle monthly lecture series. For today's session, we have with us Mr. Srihari Tote, who is an artist and illustrator exploring Indian culture, heritage, iconography, and cultural memory. His drawing on the history, folklore, which is research-led storytelling, his works connects the past with the present. He has been trained at the Deccan College Postgraduate and Research Institute, and he combines academic research with the contemporary visual narratives, which reflects his dedicated research in the art history. So, without any taking further delay, I would like to formally invite to Mr. Sri Hari Tote for his today's session. So, welcome, Sri Hari, for today's session. Over to you.
Okay. Thank you, Guruvendra. Thank you, Dhananjay sir. Thank you, Ganveer sir, for kindly inviting me to this lecture. So, without further ado, I'll just begin my presentation and I am sharing my screen. Before we begin, just somebody kindly confirm whether my screen is visible as well as if I'm audible or not.
Actually, you are audible, but your screen is not visible.
Yeah, I'm just trying to share it. Somehow it is not happening.
Yeah, share the entire screen, then it
Eh,
will be visible.
Okay. Okay. Is it visible now?
Yes, now it has been appeared. Yes.
Okay.
Can you
So
make it
yeah,
full screen?
yeah. Just let me do it. Okay. I hope it is visible now completely on the screen.
Yes, now it's perfect.
Okay. So, good evening, everyone. My topic for today is how shrines, rocket sanctuaries, and Jain hagiography they converge at Dharashiv Caves in Maharashtra. So, without further ado, and with great salutations to Bhagwan Parshavnath, let's begin. Okay. So, beginning with the core argument, yeah. So, beginning with the core argument, we find that in the medieval period, especially around the 10th century CE, there is a great proliferation of Jain rocket architecture in Maharashtra. And we find several sites in the Western Deccan, especially around the Nashik region, especially around the northern part of Maharashtra, where we find a lot of Jain excavations which are both large and small in scale. And even earlier excavations we see at Ellora, where there was a huge Jain culture and instances of patronage. But unfortunately, despite the presence of such great architectural and iconographical edifices, there is very less to tell us about the instances of patronage and the religious history and the religious culture surrounding these places. So it really becomes difficult to understand that despite such widespread geographical presence and geographical network in medieval Maharashtra, that what kind of religious culture, what kind of ideas were associated with Jainism. Ultimately, we call them as tirtha kshetras, but we have to understand that how these tirtha kshetras form. But luckily for us, Dharashiv caves in the Dharashiv or the erstwhile Osmanabad district of Maharashtra, they present for us a very strong case to understand that how Jain culture, how Jain thought or tradition, it was reimagining the sacred spaces in the medieval period. Okay. So Dharashiv caves, along with the larger region of Ter or Tagara, where it is situated, it occupies a very distinctive position in medieval Jain hagiographical literature. And the hero of today's discussion and these hagiographical literature is Raja Karakandu. So we will see today that how the Tir-Dharashiv region is not only archaeologically important, but how it is imagined and it is constructed in the narrative in the past, and how the Karakandachariu or the story of Raja Karakandu is embedding the Jaina sacred hagiography through sacred geography through hagiography and the instances of miracle and memory. So to begin with our proper geographical location, so we have to understand the architectural context and history of the Ter Dharashiv region. So Dharashiv caves, they are located very near to the Dharashiv town and they're excavated into a ravine. And the larger region of Ter, it lies further 23 kilometers to the northeast on the right bank of river Terna. So the Dharashiv cave complex, it is divided into two portions which entirely comprise of seven rocket excavations. So of these, the four rocket excavations are on the northern side, and there are three more excavations which are facing the western direction. So for our discussion today, we are focusing on the northern group of caves, which are very extensively featured in Karakandachariu. So, regarding their architectural significance, the most important for today's discussion are cave number 2 and 3, which are dedicated to Parshavnath Bhagwan. And by the way, all the caves, most of the caves in the Dharashiv complex, they are dedicated to Parshavnath Jaina only. But it is cave number 2 and 3 which feature most extensively in the text. And within the narrative language, the caves are called as Thousand Pillared Hall. And their layout is very much important in the present discussion today. So Dharashiv caves have always exhibited themselves as an anomaly whenever it comes to rocket architecture in Maharashtra. And if most of the people must be aware that how in the past there were a lot of debates between great scholars such as Dr. V.V. Mirashi and Dr. Dhavlikar regarding the attribution and the origins of these caves. But according to Dr. Virat Shah in 2008, most of these caves they have been reconciled in chronologically by early 6th century CE, and architecture on the basis of architectural and iconographical analysis, they have been put close to the Vakadaka examples as seen at Ajanta and Ramtek. Now, unfortunately, we don't have any single piece of epigraphical evidence coming from Dharashiv region, but only on the stylistic basis, we see that we are trying to put it into the larger framework of the Ajanta caves, the phase two of the Ajanta caves, which begins in the 5th century CE. Okay. So this is the landscape that I was speaking about, and we will today discover that how it is featured in the legend of Karakandu as described in Karakandachariu. So this is the northern part of the cave, especially cave number 3, and this is the southern part of the cave. The modern context of the caves as they stand today are that they are present in a very dilapidated situation. There are a lot of instances of rock failure and water seepage at the site, and the caves are abandoned. Especially when we look at the southern group of the caves, cave number 567, they are completely abandoned and waterlogged. And whatever instances of worship or whatever instances of tourism that we find, they're mostly situated in the northern group of caves, which are 4 in number. Okay, moving forward. So this is the main hero of today's our discussion, the cave number 2, and it is called as Thousand Pillar Hall at Dharashiv. If you look at the facade of the cave and the formidable and the robust pillars inside the mandapa, one can easily imagine that how they are connected to Ajanta, because on the stylistic basis, on the minor relief carvings or on the layout of the cave, they are very much akin to the second phase at Ajanta. Even if you look at the Sanctum Sanctorum where Bhagwan Parshvanath is situated, you will find that how his image is very much in accordance with the stylistic idioms established at the second phase of Ajanta. So this particular image, it has caused a lot of controversy, a lot of debate in the earlier decades, where scholars such as Dhavlikar and Mirashi, they were arguing about whether if this image belongs to Jaina or Buddha. But nonetheless, it is now widely accepted that this image is of Bhagwan Parshvanath only. And these are the layouts of cave number 2 and cave number 3 central to our discussion today. And even on the basis of layouts, we can see that how they subscribe to an established idiom of cave layouts at Ajanta. And okay, so before delving into Karakandu's story, Karakandu's biography, and how he is related to the Dharashiv caves, it is important that we understand the concept of Raja Karakandu. And interestingly, Karakandu is a shared heroic figure who occurs both in Jain as well as Buddhist traditions. In Buddhist tradition, Karakandu appears as a Pratyeka Buddha in one of the Jataka tales. And even Jaina tradition reimagines Karakandu as a Pratyeka Buddha. And though we don't have any evidence that Karakandu existed as a historical king, but most of the Jain traditions, they think that Karakandu was existing before the time of Bhagwan Mahavir. So we have to understand that what in fact a Pratyeka Buddha is. So a Pratyeka Buddha is that kind of a being who attains enlightenment through an external stimulus. A certain event, a certain moving, a deep event has to occur in a Pratyeka Buddha's life in order for him to understand the concept of detachment and vairagya. And Pratyeka Buddha never really studies under a teacher. He does not really practice under an established arihant or a teacher. And a Pratyeka Buddha is quite distinct from the identity of an arihant. And as we are looking at the life of Karakandu, it is very common to the traditions which we see in which Indian kings, the stories of Indian kings are told in Indian literature. He follows the archetype of a venerable hero king who ultimately renounces the world, and his richly elaborated biographies are preserved both in Digambar and Shwetambar traditions. So both Digambar and Shwetambar traditions venerate Raja Karakandu, the Shwetambar traditions being the earliest in time, and Digambara traditions coming a little later. But the Shwetambar traditions of Raja Karakandu are bit tight, they are bit compact, and they don't speak much about his adventures or of his life in that explicit detail. But thankfully for us, it is the Digambara tradition and the Digambara text regarding King Karakandu, which actually connect him to the landscape, the sacred landscape of Dharashiv region. And the prominent text that which I am reading today is Brihatkathakosha by Harishena and Karakandachariu by Kanakamara Muni, which are both dated to 10th century CE. Though there is there are some other scholarly regarding the dating of this text, but personally I put it in the 10th century common era. Of this, Brihatkathakosha occurs a few decades earlier than Karakandachariu, as well as in Brihatkathakosha, because it is a Katha Kosha, it is more like an encyclopedic text which has so many stories. So in Brihatkathakosha, the story of King Karakandu, it occurs in a more tight version, but it is in Karakandachariu which we see that it takes the form of a piece of literature, a piece of epic which is comparable to Ramayana or Mahabharata. Because in Karakandachariu, we will find that there are 10 different sandhis or 10 different chapters which delve deeper into the life, the character, the origins, and the bhakti or the devotion of Raja Karakandu. And within these texts, it is important to note that Sandhis 4 and Sandhi 5, two main chapters, they are completely dedicated to Raja Karakandu's association with the Dharashiva Caves. Okay, so now we will actually move towards understanding Karakandu's association with Dharashiv region. And kindly note that this story is actually a bit complex and it has so many layers, but I have tried to distill it into a very simple narrative. So I kindly request your attention in this part. And if we have any doubts or if there is any scope for discussion, we will certainly carry it forward by the end of the lecture. So the circumstances in which Raja Karakandu is born, they are very tragic actually. So Karakandu is the son of Raja Dadivahana of Champa, and this Champa region occurs in the modern day Bhagalpur region of Bihar, and his mother's name is Queen Padmavati. So because of certain tragic circumstances, the queen, she separated from her husband while she is pregnant, and Queen Padmavati, she gives birth to Karakandu inside a Smashana Bhumi, as you can see in the generative images displayed here. So, as the moment she gives birth to Karakandu, soon there appears a Chandala, and this Chandala is actually a Vidyadhara, a celestial being who was cursed to become a Chandala. And he tells Padmavati that please let me bring this kid, let me take custody of him because इसके पालन पोषण में ही मेरी मुक्ति का रहस्य छुपा हुआ है. And reluctantly, ultimately, Queen Padmavati, she agrees and she becomes a Jain nun. And this Chandala, he brings up Karakandu as his own child, and he teaches him uh, all that what should be taught to a kid. He teaches him warfare, he teaches him scriptures, he gives him all the knowledge available, and he brings him up like his own son, like a proper man of a character. And very early in Karakandu's childhood, we discover that he is going to be a great man. So the signs of his greatness are already revealed to us in his childhood. And there is a reason why he's called as Karakandu. So Karakandu means somebody whose arm has a very black patch. So Karakandu was actually born with this black patch in his arm, and because of his deformity, the local kids, they used to call him Karakandu, Karakandu. They used to tease him by calling Karakandu. So that's how his name Karakandu happens. Okay. So ultimately, Karakandu becomes the king of Dantipura and Champa by the twist of fate. Now, Karakandu, as we see, he's brought up in the Smashana Bhumi, but there are certain twist of fate which occurs, which completely turns the table for young Karakandu. And first, he becomes the king of Dantipur, and later, when he is challenged by his father, Raja Dadivahana, then both Dadivahana and Karakandu, they come face to face in the battlefield. But soon Padmavati intervenes and she discloses the secret of the relationship. And ultimately, Raja Dadivahana, he abdicates in favor of Karakandu. And soon Karakandu, who was nobody yesterday, he becomes he becomes the entire master of Eastern India. And soon after becoming the king of Eastern India, the eastern provinces, Karakandu's ambition increases and he wants to conquer the rest of India as well. So the region of India that we are talking about in this part largely alludes to the Jambudvipa, because back then the terms such as Jambudvipa, Aryavarta, Bharatadesha, these are very common. So Karakandu tries to exert his power, exert his prowess, his military power, his sovereignty over the entire Jambudvipa. And his first targets are the kings of the Dravida Desha, namely the kings of Chola, Chera, and the Pandya regions. And he takes up his entire army and he starts his military expedition. And soon he arrives in the sacred landscape of Dharashiv region. And when he arrives at Dharashiv, the beauty of the nature as it is described in Karakandachariu, it is very captivating, that how the wildlife, how the natural and the scenic beauty of Dharashiv region completely captures him, and it stirs something inside him. It stirs this emotion of devotion and attachment to the place somehow. And while he is camping at Dharashiv, Karakandu meets the king whose name is Shiva, and this Shiva, he is the tribal chief of the Dharashiv region. Okay, and both of them, they befriend each other, they exchange niceties, and this king Shiva, he tells Karakandu about some miraculous events happening over there. Okay. So both of them, they reach the top of the hill and they find a solitary elephant worshipping an ant hill. And the kings, they are very amazed to these occurrences. And soon Karakandu has that ant hill excavated out of curiosity. And the excavation reveals a very beautiful image of Bhagwan Parshavnath. And Karakandu's devotion is inspired at this moment. And he takes this image of Bhagwan Parshavnath and he installs it within the cave. So as you can see that he has installed Bhagwan Parshavnath with all the due respects and all the due rituals inside the cave. But as soon as he makes that installation and he does all the puja, Karakandu notices some sort of anomaly with the image. He notices that the base of the image has some sort of deformity. So he asks his artisan or the Upadhyaya to take care of that and to actually break it. So ultimately, that Upadhyaya, he hits the throne of the image with his hammer, and suddenly the cave is flooded. And instantly, Karakandu regrets his decision that I have committed a great sin and what have I done? I should not be doing this. And he feels very depressed at that moment. But suddenly, a celestial Sura or a guardian Sura, he appears and he describes the 60,000-year-old legend of the caves and the people or the patrons who established these caves. So it is important that how the narrative, it is now pivoting towards the history of the cave, the mythical history of the cave. Of course, authors such as Kanakamara and Harishena, they actually did not know about who the original excavators of or the original patrons of these caves were. But now they are making an attempt by going deep into the literature by reimagining the patrons of this Dharashiv region. And now we are moving towards a flashback where this Guardian Sura is describing the history of the entire Dharashiv region and the images to Karakandu. Okay. Just a moment, I'll have a sip of water. So now the flashback arc starts, and it is revealed to us that there are two Vidyadhara brothers whose names are Neela and Mahanil, and they come all the way from the Himalayan region, which is their capital. And they are exiled because of some circumstances, and they finally enter the sacred landscape of Ter Dharashiv region. And out of complete devotion for Bhagwan Parshavnath, they excavate the caves inside the hill. And soon after they excavate the caves, there they have another group of friends whose names are Amitavega and Suvega, and both of them, they are Vidyadharas as well. And both Amitavega and Suvega, because they are Vidyadharas, so the concept of Vidyadharas is that they have various siddhis, they have various magical powers by which they can fly over the skies and they can go to any place at their will. And Amitavega and Suvega, they are actually touring the southern part of India near Sri Lanka, near the borders of Sri Lanka, and on a sacred place called Pudi Hill. And this Pudi Hill, according to Dr. Hiryalal Jain, the translator of this text, it is identified with a certain hill at in the Kerala region. On the Pudi Hill, they encounter a beautiful shrine where all the images of the Tirthankaras, the Jainas, are venerated. And this temple, it was built by a deity called Suraprabha, who is the descendant of Ravana. And at this Pudi Hill, they encounter a very beautiful image of Bhagwan Parshavnath, and they are so enamored by it that they actually steal it and go back to their home. And they make a stop at Dharashiv Hill to take some rest, and they install the image temporarily over there. But as Bhagwan Parshavnath will have it, the image does not move from the hill, and both the brothers instantly feel guilty for their act of stealing. So there is a Jain Muni operating in the place who tells them that this hill will become a sacred space in future. So you don't have to worry, and you have to take the path of detachment. So both Amitavega and Suvega, they become Jain monks, and they renounce their lives at the same place. So eventually, due to some karmic bonds, this Suvega, this Vidyadhara Suvega, he is born as the same elephant who the King Karakandu and King Shiva encounter on the top of the hill. And as soon as Karakandu places the image of Bhagwan Parshavnath inside the cave, the elephant attains moksha. So you can see that how the elements of karmic bonding, the elements of great mythological history, they are connecting all the characters of great past with the Dharashiv region, with the Dharashiv caves. Raja Karakandu, he's so much inspired by the occurrences, by these sacred stories, that he himself wants to participate in the excavation of the caves. So, devotionally inspired by these legends, Raja Karakandu excavates two more caves, and according to Dr. Hiralal Jain, these caves could be identified with cave number 3 and cave number 4. So, as we had seen earlier while looking at the layout of these caves, that how layout wise and in terms of architectural and iconographical significance, the caves, they entirely mirror the thousand pillar hall. So these caves, according to the narrative, not archaeologically, but according to the narration, uh, they are identified with Raja Karakandu as its patron. Okay. So we are now moving towards the later part of Raja Karakandu's life, and I have omitted lots of adventures, lots of stories embedded, which make the story even more interesting. But due to the lack of time, we have to uh, move towards the conclusion of the legend. And Raja Karakandu is ultimately successful in his Dakshina Digvijaya, and he rules happily for many years. Now there is a certain event which triggers the Pratyeka Buddha phase of Raja Karakandu, and he witnesses a mother, a woman, a lady who is crying over the dead body of her child. And this event, it is enough to inspire the feeling of detachment, the feeling of vairagya in Raja Karakandu. So he ponders about his own life, that why he was born in such mysterious and unusual circumstances, and why he had to face so many problems in his life. So what we have discussed mostly describes the good part of Karakandu's life, but there are so many issues within the Karakandachariu that currently we are not addressing in this lecture. But Karakandu is ultimately depressed because of all these events, and he seeks counsel from a sage called Shilagupta. And Shilagupta, he narrates several stories. He takes Karakandu to a flashback where he discusses past births of several characters from the epic, including Karakandu, including his parents Padmavati, and as well as Dadivahana, and he explains the karmic relation for each of them. For Karakandu, it is important to discuss his past life because even in his past life, Karakandu is associated with Dharashiv region. So Karakandu in his past life was a cowherd called as Dhanadatta, who offered the lotus flower to Jaina of the Dharashiv caves with, as you can see over here, with dirty arms. So he discovers this lotus flower inside a sacred pond, and he's so excited to find it that he goes without purifying himself to in front of Bhagwan Parshavnath. And because of this small karma, this small issue in his worship, he is reborn as Karakandu. And because in his past action his arms were completely dirtied by mud, that is why in his present birth as Karakandu his he has this black patch on his arm. So you can see that how the entire narrative of Karakandu is now coming to a full circle. When Karakandu realizes this, he's so you can see he's so moved at this point, and ultimately he takes the decision to take vairagya. He renounces his kingdom, and he attains kevala gnana by practicing austerities. Now this is the conclusion of Karakandachariu in a nutshell. Okay, so moving forward, now we are coming to the analysis of our story, and we have to understand that how Karakandu is operating in the sacred geography of India. So Karakandachariu of Kanakamara, it follows the structural logic of Sanskrit epics. And as in epic literature of India, geography is not ornamental. Geography is not there just to set a stage for characters, but it is also important because how the characters are interacting with geography and how they are finding new positions and how they are discovering the sanctity of the different places throughout the geography of the region. Much like Ramayana and Mahabharata, uh, Karakandachariu offers us an example of a sacred trail in which hero's journey through multiple sites mirrors his spiritual transformation while simultaneously enhancing the sanctity of those locations. For example, all of us we know of the Ramayana trail, that how different locations in the Bharatvarsha and Ramayana, they are very sacred. For example, Chitrakoot, for example, Hampi, for example, Dandakaranya. Similarly, Karakandachariu, it gives us a very beautiful example of how different places in India, they are connected to the Ter Dharashiv region through their characters. So if you can see this map that I have created over here, we will find that how Karakandu in his military expedition is coming to Tirapura, right? And after completing his Dakshina Digvijay, he's once again returning to Dharashiv. Okay. Similarly, in the mythological landscape, we will find that how Nila and Mahanila, they are coming from the northern region, from the Himalayan region, and they're establishing Dharashiv in the first place. And Amitavega Suvega, the friends of these Vidyadhara brothers, they are going all the way to the Pudi hill in Kerala, and they are bringing that image of Bhagwan Parshavnath and installing it in Dharashiv. So there is a beautiful theory by a scholar called Jaina Ek, and in this through this theory we understand that how Bhagwan Parshavnath is becoming Pratishtita, that there are multiple consecrations by multiple characters. First it is Nila Mahanila, then Amitavega Suvega, and ultimately Karakandu, who is establishing the sanctity of sites of this site by repeatedly consecrating the image and the presence, sacred presence of Bhagwan Parshavnath in it. So of course none of this could be proven historically in a very logical sense, but this gives us a direction as to how the authors of this epic, Kanakamara and Harishena and even others, they are trying to reimagine and reinterpret the sanctity of Dharashiv caves. Because by the time these authors they were operating in 10th century CE, the Dharashiv caves they were already abandoned, and there was we don't know what kind of activity or devotional activity was occurring in this place. But it is also significant to note that these authors they functioned in this place. They were aware of the Tirthas region, its sanctity, its history, and somehow they had this first-hand knowledge of this region, and that is why they were able to integrate Dharashiv region within this vast epic literature and sacred framework. Okay. So by tracing Karakandu's journey across Jambudvipa, the narrative positions Dharashiv as a central node within a pan-Indian sacred geography where multiple spiritual trajectories converge. As we are seeing that how Dharashiv is being framed as the central part in India where all the characters from all the timelines they are meeting together. So it is like a different kind of a historical universe which is working together over here. Okay. And so this attempt on the place of authors, it creates a memory anchor at Dharashiv. So Karakandu's act of excavating caves at Dharashiv and patronizing them, it is ultimately to be read as the act of merit. And it creates a narrative template which encourages future patrons or the readers of these narratives to make investment, to excavate, to make merit by patronizing these caves, to create more presence, more devotional presence at the caves. And similarly, Karakandachariu, it makes various references to Karakandu as King Bharata and Dharashiv as Kailasha in this epic. So the kind of framing of Dharashiv region as a very sacred tirtha, as a Kshetra of Atishaya or as the place of miracles, we find happening via Karakandachariu. So ultimately, by the time these texts were written and these texts were very popular in the local culture or in the system of royal patronage, we find that the Dharashiv region and the Ther region at large, it has taken up the identity of a tirtha for Jainism within the Digambara Jaina tradition. It is also important to understand that Harishena and Kanakamara, they might have worked directly or indirectly under the Jain patronage of Rashtrakutas, because by 9th century CE we observe that how the Rashtrakutas of Manyakheta, they were patronizing a lot of Jain literature, and even several excavations at Ellora, those are attributed to the Rashtrakutas, though we don't have any direct epigraphical evidence in this regard. But it is interesting to note that probably Harishena and Kanakamara, they were functioning in this timeline, and how it must have influenced their narratives of Ter Dharashiv region. And it is important to note that the emphasis on vernacularization in the Rashtrakuta court, as it was happening during this time, where lots of works of Jain literature, especially, they were being transformed from their original Sanskrit language to Kannada language through Apabhramsha and also in Apabhramsha language to appeal the local masses. So this theory of vernacularization is also important in understanding the reimagination of Dharashiv region as a Tirtha Kshetra. Okay. So again, we are moving towards medieval period and how the patronage activities at Ter Dharashiv region does not stop, but we see in the medieval period several instances where medieval patronage manifests at the Ter Dharashiv region. So during the time of Shilaharas in uh, the period of 10th and 11th and 12th century CE as well, we find that the Jain material culture at Ter Dharashiv region expands, and lot of sacred imagery in form of small sculptures in form of small stels can be observed both at Dharashiv region as well as at a temple of Bhagwan Mahavir in the Ter village. Now, unfortunately, because of modern activities, these images, these cultural kashi from Dharashiv caves are lost, and only a few are remaining. But we get to see that how patrons are interacting in the medieval period with this region. And it is important to note that the cult of Bhagwan Parshvanath is very central to this region. Although in Ther we find that Bhagwan Mahavir takes the more important place in the later period, but Parshvanath ultimately he remains very central to the region as the identity, as his identity. And from the sacred stels which we see at Bhagwan Mahavir's temple at Ter, we find several instances of patronage of the Dampatis or the couples. So it is difficult to say. Again, we don't have any epigraphical records to what extent did Shilaharas interact with the Ter or the Dharashiv region in the context of Jainism. But still, because of these sculptures, we get to understand that various patrons from the domestic side who did not belong to any sort of aristocracy or kingship, they were contributing to the reemergence of the Ter Dharashiv region. And the beauty of and the sanctity of the Ter Dharashiv region does not only stop over here, but several pilgrimage literature from medieval period, especially in the Marathi and the Gujarati languages, such as Jambu Swami Charitra and Tirthavadana or the Tirthavali, they describe the Dharashiv region's sanctity even in the 15th and 16th century. And if we look at some of the images in the Dharashiv caves and some of the repair and restoration activities in the Dharashiv caves, we will find that these activities are occurring until 19th century CE. When James Burgess first visited the Dharashiv caves, he noted that the central image of Bhagwan Parshvanath, it was painted. And if you remember earlier from this slideshow, you will see that his image is still painted in vivid colors. And according to James Burgess, it was happening even in 19th century. So we see that though the current presence, Jain presence at Dharashiv caves is almost very less or completely, you can say, non-existent, but until very late in chronology, until very late in history, Dharashiv held a very strong position in the Jain life of the Ter Dharashiv region. Okay. So moving towards our last slide, we see that how Karakandu emerges as a geometrical anchor for the Ter Dharashiv region, and he embeds the site firmly within the Jain sacred hagiography and memory. So his presence is very important because this is how people remember the Ter Dharashiv region, through Karakandu, not through any epigraphical record, not through any other pattern, but Karakandu becomes the poster boy or the brand ambassador for the Ter Dharashiv region across literature, across its identity in the Jain sacred geography. The story of Karakandu, if one finds time to read it, they will find that it reflects complete human emotion. And Karakandu is not a very, you can say, a perfect hero. He has his human side. He makes a lot of mistakes. He has these moments of weaknesses. For example, the way in which he accidentally broke the throne of Bhagwan Parshvanath image suggests that how impulsive he could be to interfere with the sanctity of an image. But that is not Karakandu's own fault. That is human nature. And how Karakandu's human side and karmic casuality, it emphasizes his human nature, and how ultimately merit takes place, and how Karakandu is portrayed as a patron of a sacred space, right? And though, as I'm repeating my point once again, that we don't know that who exactly made Dharashiv caves, whose patronage it was. There are multiple theories for it, and there is a lot of debates ongoing in this arena. But still, reimagining Karakandu as the patron of the site, it gives us uh, an anchor, a proper anchor to reinterpret Dharashiv caves in the Jain religious tradition. And it is interesting to note that Karakandu's hagiography travels beyond the region, and even later authors such as Raidhu and Jinaprabha Suri integrate the legend of Karakandu or the legend of Dharashiv in their own sectarian traditions. Raidhu is important because Raidhu is a poet as well as an artisan who worked in the colossal jinas of the Gwalior fort. and Raidu writes his own version of Karakandachariu, as it is evident. So even beyond the geography of Dharashiv region, beyond Maharashtra, how the legend of Karakandu and how the sanctity of Dharashiv, it is inspiring several authors even in the medieval period. For example, the current translation of Karakandachariu, which I was working upon, it was translated by Dr. Hiralal Jain in 1922, I think. And Dr. Hiralal Jain gets this manuscript of Karakandachariu from Jaipur. So you can imagine that through textual tradition within the religious atmosphere of Digambara Jain tradition, how far the legends of Karakandu has traveled, and how what kind of impact it is making in Jain sacred geography as well as Jain sacred history. And this is how we see that at Dharashiv, how hagiography, how memory, and how legends, they are coming together and they are fusing geography with sacred history and linking various actors, both human and divine, sacred sites with the Jain cosmos, and how they are integrating as a and giving us a very complete picture. So this marks the conclusion of my talk today, and I would like to acknowledge Dr. Shrikant Ganveer, Mr. Roshan Bum, and all the other respected members of Bhagwan Sheetalnath Chair for Jain Archaeology at Deccan College, and for providing me this opportunity to deliver this talk. I am thankful to my friend Aman Pagare for generously sharing the photographs of the Dharashiv caves. I extend my sincere gratitude to my friend Pratik, who is a doctoral student at the University of Florida, for his valuable corrections and insightful inputs on my drafts of this paper. I also acknowledge all the anonymous sources of the images that I obtained from the public domain, and all the generative images used in the slideshow are made using Google Gemini. So these are the references, both primary and the secondary, that I have used. And okay, Vichami Dukkadam. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Srihari. Uh, if anyone have any question, you can write it down in the message box. We have one question from Mahesh Kumar. He's asking about is are there any books available on Jain caves across India?
Okay, so there are a lot of books available when it comes to Jain caves. The most prominent is the PhD dissertation of Dr. Virat Shah ma'am, Jain caves in Western India, and it is an entire thesis where you will find all the excavations, all the rock cut architecture with regards to Jainism when it comes to the Maharashtra region.
Hello.
Hello, am I audible, sir?
Yes, yes.
Yeah. Sir, I just want to ask, my presentation was clear, right? I mean, there was no any network issue in the middle. I hope I was clear
No, no,
throughout.
no, not at all. Yes. Uh,
Okay, thank you.
there's one comment from Pahi Barua. It is strange
Yeah,
to see that there very less mention about these historical monuments in most of the history books.
it is interesting to ponder, ma'am. That's why such places, they are not discussed in the larger history. But as one makes pilgrimage, one reads about it, and one themselves they experience the site, they get to know a lot more beyond the books. And I think experience speak a lot. And I think emerging scholarship and emerging scholarly presence in this arena will be going to be helpful, and we can expect more research and more knowledge to come about these sites, hidden sites.
Okay. We have one appreciation from Ishani Chaudhary. Thank you so much for this enriching lecture. It is great to know about the less known sites and history.
Thank you so much, Ishani.
Then again, we have one. Please give list of books in written format. It is request. Okay. Can you request to sir Vivek Garg sir? Can you please mention your mail ID so we can reach out to you?
Sure, sure. I think I'll type it out in the box.
Yeah. Also, there is one question. Please describe the art of the caves, particularly about the pillars, from Vijay Zadav.
Okay. Do we have the time, sir?
Yes, we have.
Okay. So can I go back to my slideshow?
Yeah, you can.
Okay, okay, okay. So yeah, so this is the one clear image that have regarding the cave number 2. I hope it is visible to everyone.
Yes, it is.
Okay. So most of the scholars, especially M.K. Dhavlikar, V.V. Merashi, and Dr. Viracha ma'am, they have described that how the pillars of cave number 2 at Dharashiv, they are very similar to the ones at Ajanta caves. Especially if when we talk about the phase 2 of Ajanta, the most prominent caves are cave number 1, 2, cave number 6, cave number 16, and 17. So in the Vakataka idiom, when it comes to cave architecture, there are lots of categories of pillars, and mostly you will find iconography embedded on these pillars. But in this instance, you will see that there is mostly foliage. Okay, so there is mostly the ratna pattas or the ardha chandras or the ardha padmas on these caves. Unfortunately, most of the interior pillars of this mandapa, they are damaged and they have been reconstructed by the state archaeology department of Maharashtra. But it is quite unfortunate because we don't know that how exactly these pillars look. But of course we have one or two surviving examples based on this how the reconstruction was made. This cave was, for the most part, it was waterlogged, and it was damaged because of several natural agents. But when speaking broadly, the pillars of the Dharashiv caves, they are very simple when we see it in comparison to the Ajanta cave pillars. So there are different typologies. At the facade, you can see the pillars are cylindrical, whereas inside the mandapa, the pillars are more of the ruchaka or more of the cuboidal type. So I think this, I hope this satisfies your query, sir.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
The next question is kind of similar to the last one.
Okay.
It was a great lecture. Loved it. Please explain the
Thank you.
Dharashiv caves similarities with Ajanta caves from Raj Shekhar Mondal.
Okay. So, as I have already described the importance of the layout. So, if you can see the layout of Dharashiv caves over here, so it has this veranda, a huge veranda, which is entered via a gateway, and it has this forecourt. If you can see my cursor, which has this long forecourt and additional cells. Okay. Now, when you move towards the main mandapa, or the pillared hall of the Dharashiv caves, they are very similar in layout to Ajanta. You can say that it is almost 99% the layout of Ajanta caves, or even 100%. So even these cells flanking the main cave, you can see that these cells, they are excavated in great congruency, and they mirror the quality and the scale of the Vakataka period excavations at Ajanta. The most important feature, however, is this representation of Bhagwan Parshavnath, and this is the source for all the debates whenever it comes to Dharashiv and Ajanta. So scholars were of the opinion, certain scholars were of the opinion, especially Dr. Dhavlikar, that this image represents Buddha. But again, when we see the Vakataka representations of Buddha at Ajanta caves, we don't find any instances of the Naga Chhatra over him, as well as we don't find Bhagwan Buddha seated in this particular form of Dhyana Mudra. He's mostly seen in Dharma Chakra Pravartana Mudra. So there was some debate regarding whether if this particular image of Bhagwan Parshavnath, is it a Buddha image at all. So this image is one of the instances where similarity between Ajanta and Dharashiv can be seen. But again, we don't have any epigraphical evidence as to say that who built this cave. So it really becomes difficult to ascertain the idea of patronage, the idea of any kind of attachment with a particular royal group or a particular religious group when it comes to Dharashiv caves. So mostly we have to understand Dharashiv caves on the basis of iconography and architectural remains. I hope that answers your query, Raj.
Okay, we have
Yeah.
some appreciation and question from Amol Bankar.
Yes.
Wonderful lecture. Thank you. I'm
Thank you,
curious
sir.
about the Shilahara connection. Geographically, they are located far from Dharashiv.
So one instance where I try to connect Shilaharas with Dharashiv region, or the Ter Dharashiv regions, if we speak about it more broadly, is that how Shilaharas, or the Kolhapur branch of Shilaharas, they specifically describe themselves as Tagarapuradhishwara. I accept that while connecting Dharashiv with Shilaharas, I don't have a lot of proofs or records to directly connect it with any Shilahara dynasty or any Shilahara king in particular. But if we look at these images from the Mahavir temple at Ter, we will find that how similar they are from the Kolhapur temple of Bhagwan Parshavnath. So on art historical basis, I place it more closely to Shilaharas again. And there is another instance which is very interesting, and it is mentioned by Dr. Hiralal Jain as well. So the Shilaharas of Kolhapur, in their epigraphical inscriptions, they refer to themselves as Vidyadhara Putras. They somehow trace their ancestry back to the Vidyadhara clan. And as we see that Dharashiva Caves in Karakandachariu, it is mentioned that how Vidyadharas, Amitavega, Suvega, Neela, Mahanila, they are connected with Dharashiv. So maybe these Vidyadharas were not actually some sort of celestial beings, but they were some they could be identified with some local power which was functioning in that region during 6th 7th century CE, and maybe how Shilaharas are connected to that particular lineage. So it remains a point which where more investigation is required. So this is just a very infant stage of my position on Shilaharas and Dharashiv, but nonetheless I have included it in my paper right now.
Okay. uh, One more appreciation message from your friend. Hi Srihari, I don't have any question. Just wanted to express my appreciation. The lecture was one amazing and thoroughly researched. Well done, my friend. From Aman Pagare.
Thank you so much, Aman, and thank you once again for all the photographs that you have shared.
Again, we have one comment from Saili Padande Datar. Walter Spring
Okay.
had suggested attribution in these caves to Vishnu Kundis,
Uh,
architecturally slightly later than Ajanta.
so yeah, it I don't think I'm not sure whether if Vishnu Kundins would be possible, because I'm not sure whether if Vishnu Kundin dynasty must have operated this far in the north. I think I need to investigate that particular point personally. But I have another opinion in this regard. It could be that Dharashiv caves could be a product of Chalukyan hand as well, because we see that Dharashiv region is very in close proximity to the Chalukyan domain at Badami. And I'm not saying this completely, but there could be some Chalukyan connection to Dharashiv as well. Though art historically and architecturally it is more close to the Vakataka example, but we can think that there were some sort of Chalukyan vassals who operated in this region who patronized these caves. So as far as Vishnu Kundin connection is there, ma'am, I need to investigate that honestly. But this is my personal opinion regarding the Chalukyan connection, and let's see like how it stands the waters of scholarly opinion.
Okay.
Yeah.
We have next question from Sujit Yadav. What are the
Okay.
reasons behind making small holes in the cave wall and pillars?
Okay, so in Dharashiv, I don't remember whether if there are any such small holes in cave walls and pillars, but the size of the uh, holes matters in certain instances. Most of these holes or most of these uh, changes, they are not the part of the original excavation, because they're not really necessary in it. But when later group of people in future in later centuries, when they occupy these caves, they try to customize the caves according to their own needs. Sometimes they want to place some lighting instruments such as earthen lamps or some objects inside the caves. So they excavate these niches or some some holes inside the walls and the pillars. So that could be the reason. But in original plan of the cave, such changes are not usually observed.
Okay. Next question is from Pratik Harare. Is any wall paintings found in caves?
From Dharashiv caves, unfortunately, because these caves are so old and there is a problem of waterlogging, and even local people have whitewashed this cave from the inside, so we don't have any wall paintings in the caves. But if you go to Dharashiv today, you will find lot of vandalism, lot of people writing their names and people drawing caricatures on the wall. So those are the only known instances of wall paintings in Dharashiv, not the original paintings. We don't know whether if there were actually present or not. But judging from the size and scale of Ajanta, it could be plausible that originally Dharashiv caves did have some paintings, but currently I don't think it is. Uh, oh, wait a moment. I think Dr. Virat Shashi makes a mention of a painting in cave number 3. Uh, it it is based on the reports of Burgess, if I recall it correctly. But currently, based on my recent investigation, I don't see any painting remnant in Dharashiva Caves. So definitely these caves, they were painted, but unfortunately they don't survive in modern context.
There are message from Saili Parande Datar ma'am. There were paintings before, as she have some of the photographs.
Please, ma'am, it will be a great help if you can share it with me. I think it will be very important for analysis. Thank you.
She assured to share it. Okay, we have
Hello.
sorry. Yeah, we have next question from Vivek Garg. How many states and Jain pilgrimage are covered in Karakundu journey?
So Karakandu's story in Karakandachariu, it mostly talks about Dharashiv region only. It does not speak about any other Jain pilgrimage site, though it makes occasional mentions to Kailasha, which is very sacred in Jain sacred geography. But and yes, along with it, it makes mention of the Pudi hill in the Kerala region. So apart from that, we don't find any major Jain shrines of Indian subcontinent as described in Karakandachariu.
Okay, again, a question from Vivek Garg. Language and scripts used in work related to Karakandu work wrote by any great Jain saint or sadhus.
Yes. So the Karakandachariu, both the versions that we currently have, that I'm currently studying, the first is Brihatkathakosha. It was written by a very prominent Jain Muni of Digambara sect. His name is Harishena. So Harishena came from the Mysore region and he traveled all the way to Gujarat and he settled in Gujarat. And it is believed that he composed Karakandachariu in the coastal Gujarat region. So while going from Mysore to Gujarat, he must have visited the Dharashiv region. So that's why I say that he must have had some familiarity with the site. And Harishena's Brihatkatha which describes Karakandu's legend, it is in Sanskrit language. Whereas when we speak about Kanakamara, who is the author of Karakandachariu proper, he was a native of we don't know where he was a native of, but he composed Karakandachariu in the Assaye region. Now, this the identity of this Assaye region it is debated, but Dr. Hiralal Jain believes that it could be this Assaye village, which is very near to Jalna. And Assai is also a very prominent village in colonial history where there was a fight between English and Marathas, if I'm not mistaken. Lord Cornwallis, if I remember it correctly. So this Assai is where Karakandachariu was written by Kanakamara, and the Karakandachariu, it is not in Sanskrit, it is not in Prakrit, but it is in Apabhramsha language. And Apabhramsha language had a great significance in the medieval period, especially in the Rashtrakuta domain. And Apabhramsha was kind of a semi-literary language which could be understood by most of the people. And its meters, its description, it is very beautiful. So yeah, that is about both the texts that I know.
Okay.
Yeah.
We have appreciation words from Mahesh Kumar. Thank you for enriching our understanding. Then we have question from Gopal Jogi sir. What is your take on a plan of the caves as per at its Jain affiliation? Do you have other substantial examples of such kind in Jain tradition? Are these caves are shrines come residential?
Uh, as far as the residential affiliation, residential character of Dharashiv caves, as we see, these are very peculiar. And in Jain rock cut architecture, even at Ellora, as we see in the later examples, we don't find any residential characters of the Jain caves. They are mostly shrines, and even within the layouts of Ellora, as we see, there are different shrines dedicated within the larger layout of the cave to different tirthankaras, to uh, even siddhas, different siddhas, such as Bhagwan Bahubali. But at Dharashiv, it is a peculiar instance where we see the residential character of the caves. So currently, again, it is currently something which I'm investigating whether if Jain monks they resided in the caves as such, but like Buddhist monks. But currently, I don't have any evidence in this regard. But if we look at the larger geography of region, especially in South Indian Jainism, we find instances of rock cut beds which were dedicated to the monks. So, of course, there is association of monks with rock cut architecture in some sort of residential capacity. But in the larger and the later landscape, religious landscape of Maharashtra of Digambara Jainism, we don't see any uh, residential quarters being made inside the caves of a later period.
Okay, thank you. Then some words from Ramesh Chandankar. It is great to be connected with you all. Thank you, sir. It was a nice presentation. Then again, words from Vinayak Prab. Thank you for the insightful lecture. It was engaging and truly enriching. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you so much.
Again, question from Saili, madam. What is your take on the main shrine image being Muchilinda Buddha?
I think, ma'am, this proposition was made by Dr. Dhavlikar that this image of Bhagwan Parshvanath, as we are calling it right now, could be an image of Muchalinda Buddha. But I don't really feel that it could be an image of Muchalinda Buddha, because such large scale representations of Muchalinda were not popular in Deccan. Even I don't think we find any small scale representations of Muchalinda Buddha episode uh, in that capacity. There could be some representations, I'm not denying, but such a large scale representation, that too inside the sanctum sanctorum of a cave, it seems a little difficult. At the same time, it is crucial to notice that even if the image could be that of Muchalinda Buddha, the image is in Digambara Avastha. He does not have any clothing, any evidence of Chivara over him. So I don't think that it could be an image of Muchalinda Buddha inside the cave number 2.
Okay, thank you. We have question from appreciation word from the Yogesh Prabhudesai sir. Interesting lecture, Srihari. Thanks for the
Thank you,
wonderful
sir.
presentation. All the best for your future research in the same topic. We have again question from Gopal Zoge sir. In sacred architectural phenomena, we see recurring examples. Why did it is absent in context of Jain tradition when you are in referring its association with the Jainism?
Uh, Sir, actually, I'd like to disclose here that I'm working on the propositions which were made by Dr. Viracha ma'am, and I personally have no say whether if we are directly associating Dharashiva Caves with uh, Buddhism as such. But regardless, there is one conclusion that I'm feeling very closer to, is that Dharashiv caves could be an anomaly. They could be a very distinct example when it comes to uh, Jain rocket architecture. In the history of Maharashtra, in the history of Jain rocket architecture in Maharashtra, we don't find Jain caves as early as Buddhist caves. The only exception here is Pale caves, which are situated near Pune, and the layout of Pale caves, it is very humble when it comes to later caves. But I feel that in this region there could be some form of emergence of Jainism. There could be some Jain stronghold which could have inspired the creation of Jain rocket architecture. And of course, there are always first examples. And I think the excavators of Dharashiv caves, they were working with the prevalent plan or the prevalent architectural and stylistic idioms present in the region, which around 5th 6th century common era, the Vakatakas had a great role and they had an upper hand in determining those stylistic idioms. So currently I hold on to that opinion when it comes to Dharashiv, and I treat it as a separate anomaly. I treat it differently from other Jain rocket excavations in Maharashtra.
Okay,
And
thank you.
even by the way, like such an excavation like Dharashiv, it is only peculiar. It is a single example. I don't think we find any other similar excavations in at least in the Maharashtra region, at least in the northern part of Deccan, when we see.
Okay, message from Joge sir. Good Srihari, thought-provoking presentation followed by the insightful discussion. Thanks once again.
Thank you
Again,
so
we
much.
have a message from Kanchan Rathod. A lecture was really enriching. It was a nice presentation.
Thank you so much.
Again, Saili ma'am is asking, I have a paper on the early Jain caves in Maharashtra which challenges the Jain affiliation of it in the early phase. I shall share it with you. Thank you so much, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am. Please. It will be of a great help.
Again, we had one question about the available of the recording of previous lecture. I would like to all of our participants that all the recordings of this monthly lecture series are available on the official YouTube channel of Deccan College, and soon the last one and this lecture will be available on the YouTube channel. Thank you so much. With this, we come to the concluding part. Uh, on behalf of Bhagwan Shitalnath Chair for Jain Archaeology, Department of Ancient Indian History, Culture and Archaeology, Deccan College Postgraduate and Research Institute, Pune, I express our deepest gratitude to our esteemed speaker, Srihari Tote, for delivering such an insightful and enriching lecture. Your thoughtful presentation has significantly enhanced our understanding of Jain heritage, sacred landscape, and their historical narratives. I would like to extend a special note of gratitude to Dr. Sulek Jain sir, Dr. Narendra Pansan sir, Dr. Pawan Jain ma'am, Suresh Madkar sir, Dr. Vivek Dangi sir, Gopal Joge sir, Dr. Yogesh Prabhudesai sir, Dr. Anjay Dhanavde sir, Vinayak Parab sir, Singh Raja Ifan, and Amol Bankar sir for gracing this lecture with your valuable presence. I would also like to sincerely thank all the participants who joined us today. Your active presence and engagement made this session truly meaningful and successful. With this, we conclude today's session. Thank you all once again for being a part of this academic endeavor. Thank you all.
Sir, I would like to extend my gratitude once again to Bhagwan Shitalnath Chair for Jain Archaeology and all the audience who joined today. I was expecting a less number, but I think the post really went viral and so many people joined. Thank you all of you for being present in this lecture and interacting with me. And I think it was a great experience, and hopefully we will find more avenues for future discussion. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you all.